You can't even afford the fancier cuts of meat, even if you're at a BBQ establishment, can you? The impoverished have more than enough pickles. David, a banker who used to be my classmate, scowled down at me and violently dumped a plate of juicy pickles. I gave my mother a red cardigan, and the plate fell straight into it. Are you even aware of your actions? I might forgive you if you apologize immediately. Why ought I to? From Evergreen Bank, I'm David. Say you're sorry for being such a loser. Wasn't I just sharing some pickles? He smirked without even trying to hide it. I understand. I can plainly comprehend what you're thinking. Let's transfer the $30 million to a different bank, Mom. He stood there in disbelief, unable to comprehend what was happening. The next day, everything drastically altered, yet he never took me seriously. I'm a 36-year-old ex-banker named Scott. My mother and I were the only ones left when my father died when I was in high school. Using scholarships, I was able to complete my college education, but I left my job shortly after I started working. Since then, my life has finally stabilized and I've adapted to a new work. We went to my mother's favorite BBQ joint today to honor her 60th birthday and to express my gratitude. She was so happy that she put on the red cardigan I gave her as a birthday present immediately away. My mom was contentedly munching on cucumber pickles as we grilled tongue and short ribs. She grinned and continued, even though it was her special day and I wanted her to eat more of the meat she loves. Thank you, but these pickles from the barbecue place are my favorite. I'm also loving the meat, so don't worry. We kept eating happily until the door to the private room burst open, because if my mom is pleased, that's what counts. Hey, isn't Scott there? You appear to be doing well, but I haven't seen you since you ran away from work. My old classmate David, who used to work at the bank, was the voice. As high school classmates, David and I were always vying for the best grades. But I was usually a little bit ahead, which unilaterally made him despise me, so our unplanned encounter was really awkward. He always viewed me as a rival in high school. Don't act snobby just because you're good at studying. Our guest just so happened to be correct this time. Even though he was just as intelligent as I was, his constant defeats of me most likely resulted into animosity. He even continued to be loyal to me while attending the same institution and working at the same Evergreen Bank in the area. After 3 years of employment, the branch manager changed, which caused a change in our relationship. We were pushed to sell goods and services aggressively when the company plan was redesigned. I kept questioning whether our clients were actually benefiting from these goods and services. I started to question if I was truly taking the customer's viewpoint into account as I made offers to devoted clients and won contracts. Even as I adapted to the job, these uncertainties continued to plague me. The transfer order then arrived. Although I was aware that frequent transfers were intended to deter wrongdoing, my mother was the actual issue at the time. The phrase, "don't take your parents for granted," is frequently used. Prior to receiving a major medical diagnosis, my mother had always been in good health. I was shocked and hurried home, where my mother smiled wearily at me. Despite your busy schedule, I appreciate you coming. Don't worry, though. Surgery should guarantee that my life is not in risk because it was identified early enough. At first, I was relieved, but as our conversation progressed, I came to understand that things weren't as promising as they appeared. Despite the high success rate of the surgery, my mom would have to recuperate at home for a long period, which would make it hard for her to even handle everyday tasks, much less go shopping. She needed help getting to and from the hospital, and she would need urgent care if her condition deteriorated at home. To put it another way, someone would have to help my mom all day. It became evident after talking with my mom's primary care physician that daytime living alone would be difficult. After much consideration, I made the decision to leave the bank in light of my mom's predicament. Moving to a far-off place and leaving my mom alone was not an option, and I had been uncomfortable with the bank's regulations. My boss was sad when I resigned and made an effort to convince me to stay. My mom's health came first, even though I felt bad about leaving a location that had been kind to me. So I walked out of the bank. I haven't had any regrets about my choice in the past 3 years. However, it appeared to be the first time David believed he had defeated me. He approached my desk the day before I was to go, smirking as he said, "Lucky for you that your mom got sick just in time." His unexpected and cruel words shocked me. I was already tense with my mom's upcoming surgery. I couldn't understand how he could say something so cruel at a time like this, but he just watched my speechless reaction and started laughing disdainfully. "Don't make excuses. You just couldn't handle the bank's quotas and ran away because you couldn't cut it in sales, right? Is that all you came to say? Bad timing. I've got handover work to do, so please move aside." I managed to reply, holding back my anger. He scoffed and continued, "Being smart at school doesn't mean you can hack it in the real world. You've never faced failure before, so you were using your mom as an excuse to run away." Without the will to respond, I stayed silent. He got even more aggressive. "Must be nice, but quitting before everyone realizes you're a failure who can't meet company standards. What are you going to do now? Hide at home with your mom?" "Yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm staying home to take care of my mom, and I won't be working outside anymore, so leave me alone." I lied hastily to get rid of him. He burst into laughter as if he'd heard the funniest joke, then announced loudly across the office, "Hey, hear that? SC is going to become a shut-in from now on. He's retiring from society to be a bum." In the past, his smirking face would have left me feeling bitter, but now I see it as my final liberation from this unwanted, inseparable relationship with him. I calmly continued preparing the handover documents. After that, my mom successfully underwent her surgery and recovered at home as planned. She regained her health completely, and I began working again, establishing a new lifestyle. One day, we decided to celebrate her 60th birthday and her recovery at a barbecue restaurant, a special treat. She was happy with the present I prepared, and we were having a good time when he suddenly barged in. "I saw you when you went to the restroom earlier and thought it might be you. Turns out it really was Scott, the loser." He smirked as he threw snide remarks at me, despite my mother being present. He barged into our private room to harass us, showing that his character hadn't changed a bit. "Today is my mom's 60th birthday. We're here to enjoy this as a family, so please." I tried to speak calmly, hoping to get him to leave, but seeing an opportunity to tease me, his eyes gleamed with mischief as he decided to stay. "Are you really eating pickles at a barbecue place? Isn't that just the appetizer?" "Oh, I get it. Since you declared you'd be a shut-in and not work, you must be broke now," he said, then smirked and left the room. Relieved he'd given up, I was momentarily at ease until he returned to our private room. He began transferring cucumber pickles from his own plate to ours without permission. "You guys are really saving me here. I can't stand cheap taste like this." I was about to throw these pickles away, he said. "Hey, don't put things on our plates without asking." I protested, but he just looked down on us, grinning. "Be thankful you quit the bank and have no money, right? Even though you're at a barbecue place, you can afford the expensive meat, right?" "That's enough." I raised my voice, but he continued to look down on me condescendingly. "Since you can afford to pay for the meat, I figured I'd share the pickles. Pickles are more than enough for the poor." His voice filled with malice, mercilessly bombarding my mother and me. I really wanted to retaliate strongly, but I managed to restrain myself. Today is a special day, my mother's 60th birthday. If I let anger ruin this joyous occasion, it would only trouble my mother, who was enjoying herself until now. With that in mind, I quietly urged him to leave. "Can you please just leave now?" "Oh, I'm not running away today. Weren't you the one who quit the bank job crying because it was too tough? Looks like you should be the one to leave this restaurant." Spineless. His taunting only made my blood boil, but causing a scene here would only trouble my mother. In the restaurant, I just ran into him today. David is someone I shouldn't even be meeting anymore. He's like a stone on the roadside, a traveler you pass by on a trip, never to see again. No matter how much he insults me, I just need to let it slide for now. If I don't respond, he'll get bored and leave soon. Thinking this, I'd remain silent, but this only seemed to irritate him further. Frustrated, he furrowed his brow and picked up the plate of pickles he had added earlier. Then he deliberately spilled the juicy pickles all over the plate, overturning it right onto the red cardigan I had gifted my mother. Yikes. Oops, sorry about that, ma'am. My hand slipped, he said, offering an insincere apology with a smirk as my mother's cardigan got drenched in pickle juice and cucumber slices. I quickly stood up to ask a server for a towel, but he grabbed a napkin from the table first. I'll wipe it off right away. Oh dear, my hands just slipped, he said, laughing loudly while crushing the cucumbers with a napkin. The smell of crushed cucumbers filled the private room, and a brand new cardigan was left stained. Oh, it was a gift for my mom's 60th birthday. Haha, sorry about that. Seems like I made it worse. He continued to laugh as if watching a funny skit, enjoying my mother's distress. At that moment, my anger shook me to the core. I could ignore whatever was said to me, but I couldn't forgive him for troubling my mother. David, are you still working at Evergreen Bank at the same branch as before? Yes, that's right. Unlike when you left, I'm about to be the branch manager. I'm the top rising star, an elite among our peers now, different from someone who quit halfway through. His voice echoed in the restaurant, attracting the attention of the staff and other customers who peeked into our private room as he continued to laugh. I stared him down, giving him one last chance. Do you even realize what you've done? Apologize right now, and I might still forgive you. Huh. Why should I? An elite from Evergreen Bank apologizing to a loser like you? I was just sharing some pickles, wasn't I? As he said this, he pointed at the pickle-stained cardigan and didn't even try to hide his smirk. I see. I understand your thoughts clearly, Mom. Let's move the $30 million to another bank. He stood there dumbfounded, unable to grasp the situation. Meanwhile, my mother looked confused at my words. What's going on? You've always wanted to repay your gratitude by dealing only with Evergreen Bank because you were working there after graduation. But a person from Evergreen Bank has insulted you and me. I kept my anger in check, but it seemed my irritation was evident to both my mother and him. I continued staring at his stiffened face. Listen, David, we both have social standings, and we're not kids anymore. If you dare insult us like this in public, you must be prepared for the consequences. So what? He responded brusquely, showing no intention of apology. I sighed deeply and said firmly, I'm done dealing with you. I've decided to transfer the $30 million we have at Evergreen Bank somewhere else. After this, you'll probably understand what kind of a mess you've really caused. What are you talking about? You're saying you have $30 million in deposits. That's not even a good joke. Go ahead and cancel it if you can. It seemed that he still didn't believe I had a $30 million deposit at the bank. It's embarrassing that you'd lie like that. Don't come crying to me when you regret it. If you can withdraw $30 million from our bank, I'll applaud you, but that's impossible for a shut and poor like you. We'll see who regrets it. I've only told the truth. Look forward to what happens tomorrow. With that, I left him sitting there as I got up from the table. As we paid and left the restaurant, he continued to mock us. Do you really think I'd believe such a pathetic bluff? I'm looking forward to seeing what happens to you guys. Ignoring his continued taunts, we headed home from the barbecue restaurant. He thought it was all a lie and didn't take it seriously. But the next day, everything changed. I heard from a former colleague that the Evergreen Bank was flooded with calls right after they opened the next day. Some people even went directly to the bank to inquire, and the staff was overwhelmed with responses. David, who had arrived at work as usual, was summoned by the furious manager. "James, what's all this commotion about today? Did something happen? What have you done?" James, usually calm, yelled as if he had lost control of himself. Veins stood out on his forehead, taken aback by the intensity. David apologized while trying to understand the situation. "The phone lines are almost crashing because of the inquiries about what you did at the barbecue restaurant yesterday." "What I did? Go out for barbecue yesterday." Confused, he wiped the sweat off his forehead. Then James showed him a video on his phone. "It seems you caused a disturbance at the barbecue restaurant yesterday. There's a video of it online now, and it's causing a huge problem." "The video is online?" He grabbed the phone and focused intently on the small screen. The video showed the exchange between him and me from the previous day. "Why is there a video of this?" "I don't know anything about it, but that's you," James said, his voice filled with disbelief. "And the video. David calling someone poor and mocking them. What were you thinking?" James's words made him spit in defiance. "I just ran into an old friend by chance and got carried away joking around. Is it wrong to eat barbecue? And why is this video spreading?" The fuss was so great that a customer at the restaurant recorded everything, then posted it online as a scandal involving a bank employee. At Chain's words, he began to tremble, turning pale. The video had already been viewed over 1 million times, and deleting it now wouldn't suppress the issue. "My elite life is over. How can I solve this problem?" "Your elite life is over. That doesn't matter. What you did is a major issue, but the person you insulted was none other than." As they were talking, other bank employees came to call James and him. My mother and I had just arrived at the bank, as I had declared the day before. I was there to close the account and withdraw the $30 million. However, the counter staff informed me that such a large transaction couldn't be processed there and asked us to come to a private room where James would join us. The bank employee who guided us knew about yesterday's incident, so they decided to have him join the discussion too. David, who rushed in with James, began sweating profusely the moment he saw my mother and me. When James heard from the bank employee that I intended to withdraw the entire $30 million and close the account, he tried his best to persuade me to reconsider. "Please reconsider. Can you at least tell us why?" The reason? He knew it well. Yesterday, when I told him I would close the account, he readily agreed. He must have remembered his defiant words. He looked around uneasily and then took a few steps towards me to speak, but before he could say anything, James dropped a bombshell. "What have you done angering our top client like this? This is irreversible. Scott is a top client. That must be some mistake. He's a quitter who left this bank halfway through," James said. "You're making a terrible mistake, James." His anger seemed incomprehensible to him. He smirked as if he'd heard a joke and spoke dismissively. "Scott is just a poor man. He certainly doesn't have $30 million. James's face, turning red with anger, got even angrier with him as he continued to make excuses. "It's not a misunderstanding. He's saying he wants to withdraw $30 million from his savings. This man is the CEO of a major ID company." James exclaimed, finally realizing the truth of my words. After leaving the bank, I started managing assets from home and saving funds, which I then invested in a startup. By networking with talented entrepreneurs, I eventually founded and now run my own ID company. Hearing my background from James, he stood frozen, his face pale and silent. I spoke slowly to him. "Now, do you understand that I wasn't joking? I can trust a bank where people like you work, but I didn't know. I'll apologize if you want. Just please don't withdraw your money from the bank." He was still condescending, disappointing not just me, but also others. James, who had witnessed everything, looked at him with disdain and anger. "I thought you were a competent banker. What a disappointment. As you heard, ridiculing a customer and showing no remorse questions your integrity. I cannot entrust my assets to this bank. I reiterated my demand to withdraw the $30 million, and James sighed deeply, reluctantly agreeing. Thus, I withdrew all my assets from Evergreen Bank. He resisted to the end, shouting, "How can someone like you, who ran away from a tough job, succeed enough to have $30 million? Aren't you just a coward?" But I just shook my head calmly. "Why do you criticize leaving so much? Assessing the situation and choosing a different path is not something to be ashamed of. But you abandoned your job and lost to me. Leaving from the workplace is proof of no responsibility." It seemed that being a banker was the only thing he could boast about as a victory over me. Hearing him insist, I felt pity rather than anger. It's great to work hard with responsibility, but no one wants to live with regrets by suppressing what they truly want to do. I recalled the day I decided to resign, faced with a promotion to a distant location and my mother's surgery, followed by difficult home care. When these two futures were presented to me, I chose my mother's health. There are people who will follow the path you aspire to, and there are those who will live like me. Everyone should choose the life that suits them best. You have to decide your own life. How is that different from being selfish? I work hard. I am going to be the most successful person in this bank. I am great. He kept repeating his argument, almost screaming by the end. When someone's thoughts become so rigid, advice from others no longer reaches them. I left the bank feeling sorry. A branch of Evergreen Bank closed down. Months later, I was driving my mother to the hospital. Her illness had fully improved, and now she only needed regular checkups, which was a relief. On the way to the hospital, we passed the location where Evergreen Bank once stood. The grand building had been demolished, leaving a clean slate. "That David person was your classmate, wasn't he?" my mother asked. "I'm sorry. My 60th birthday celebration triggered all this," I replied. "No, it's okay. He's always been like that, and it's good that the branch closed down," I said. My comment about the closure wasn't a joke. This information comes from a new acquaintance in the finance industry. According to him, ever since James took charge, the branch's reputation among customers had steadily declined. James had favored David, a high-performing banker, and together they changed management policies. Even during my time, we were forced to sell unnecessary products to customers. After I left, their methods became more blatant, treating customers who refused products as poor and behaving arrogantly while being overly courteous to big clients. This unfair treatment had been problematic for a while, and there were frequent complaints against Evergreen Bank itself. With the recent scandal, the bank could no longer protect James and David. As Evergreen Bank was already reducing staff by merging branches, they quickly decided to close the branch where David worked. Other bank employees were given placements elsewhere, but James and David were not offered decent transfers and were assigned to a department that only organized old documents all day. David, with his bruised pride, resigned voluntarily after enduring about a month. "I deserve a much better job," he declared, slamming his resignation letter down before leaving the bank. James tried to cling to his job, but after David left, he was solely blamed for the branch's closure. Unable to withstand the cold treatment from colleagues and bosses, he followed David in resignation. Afterwards, James searched for a new job but couldn't find employment within the same industry due to his tarnished reputation. Nevertheless, needing to make a living, he eventually found a job as a bank security guard. Once a manager pushing unnecessary products for performance, he now finds himself humbly responding to customer complaints. On the other hand, David's life took a harsh turn after his wife divorced him and took their children with her. Forced to sell his home to pay for the divorce settlement and property division, he now lives alone in a cheap apartment. Currently, he works as a part-time employee at a local supermarket, struggling to make ends meet and pay child support. Interestingly, his manager and supervisor are former high school classmates whom he used to mock, but now he has no choice but to diligently follow their orders. He is assigned to the deli section where he sells items like potato salad and pickles daily. However, still clinging to his elitist attitude, he grumbles, "How can someone like me deal with something as poor-looking as pickles?" and neglects proper stock management. This results in poor sales, leading to frequent lectures from his once classmate, now supervisor. One can only hope that he will reflect on his behavior and change his way of living. As for my mother and me, we decided to redo her 60th birthday celebration. This whole experience made me reconsider what I truly value. I was reaffirmed that resigning was the right decision, and I felt deeply content with my choice. Mom, happy 60th birthday again. Without you, I wouldn't have had the chance to close that account. Let's continue to enjoy life in good health, I said. Thank you. I'm proud of you, my mother replied, smiling gently, obviously pleased. Motivated by these sentiments, I resolved to keep following the path I believe in. As I reflect on these thoughts, I open my computer again today to complete my work with pride.